There's some things we will not talk on air.
Like the moment Mr. Shalev gets into sharing intimate things, I just press, let's go live.
We don't talk about everything on air.
Because some details I did not need to know.
We were talking about defense mechanisms today on
A wonderful
okay.
os. No, I'm part of this.
Yeah. If I have the headphones on, I've got an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
I hear what's really coming through the airwaves.
Monday.
It's been a very interesting day of weather in the city where you've got this rain and then you've got this beautiful sun. So you go from these really great extremes at times when you get these really thick raindrops that one of them hits your head and it feels like you've taken a shower.
I love how when you describe it, I can feel it.
Yeah. And then you got gorgeous sun and you feel like, oh, wow, this is a vacation. Yeah. That's the hardest thing for me often living here the past years is that the weather's so unreliable. It's not like you can go out in shorts and think that it's going to be appropriate the whole day. At least that's how I've experienced the last 15 years. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today, people. I'm really happy that you're here. I was told by a lot of people that they only like to show up on Mondays when we have our shows together.
Should we do a silent day today?
Yeah, exactly. Only say something when you think it's valuable, and then you have to hold the stick, which is a pen. Yeah, just sit
So
in silence.
self-defense
Or defense mechanisms. That was
mechanisms. Yeah, it like what I was really looking forward to this show, and not actually, but
Yeah.
mostly I have been. Like when we talk about the mechanism, it's also I would say almost unconscious internal motion of wanting to protect something.
Yeah.
And if I take the word mechanism out, then you can be defensive, but it's more a choice, I would say.
Yeah. I love how you phrased it.
Well, it's because I also lived it with you on our show last week, Wednesday. Like after the show, I could reflect back on, especially when I saw myself, like, wow, I really had this wall. And what I recognized, it doesn't matter if what you were saying was true or not. The fact that I put a wall up in that moment created no space to explore what you were seeing in that moment. And the more I had the wall up, the more I created more tension.
That was it.
Yeah.
And I think it as a
so you could have said to me, hey, you are a complete asshole. And no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Or wow. Yeah. Or what makes you say that? Like there's if I was grounded, there would have been no conflict actually.
Obviously not. No. I mean,
and that's our show, guys.
We can go to the show of once the amygdala is charged, which I could already see in your eyes, it was charged.
Yeah.
There was the option, as everyone has the option, right, to slow it down, connect again, create the space. So I actively chose not to do that. So I didn't. I don't think of myself as like, how would you say? How
I reflect back, you didn't need to be that last week.
Mm-hmm.
You did it out of love because you were like, okay, it's time for you to step out of that.
It is and it isn't. So because there was certainly, I'm not going to say that I wasn't also like, oh fuck, now I got it. This has to happen. Like there was an aspect which also wasn't fully like, oh, let me hold space for Bambos now.
Mm.
Because if I did that, I would have just allowed us to. But I've also learned in my own life, and this is what I learned from my mentor Case, is if you're being defensive and you're in an egoic response, he spent years helping me in that charged moment. And what was going on is I was learning how to protect myself through that defense.
Mm.
And there's a bit of a play that happens because the more that the group accommodates a defensive response and we say, oh, they're charged, oh, they're not, then what happens is we're not actually helping the individual see through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is an argument.
We're enabling.
You're enabling, but one could say yes, but if they're having a trauma response, right? You could say then they're not going to understand it anyways. That one might be able to argue that. So in some ways, one could say it's irresponsible to hold someone accountable for something that they're not even aware that they're doing, because how are they supposed to actually understand it and grow? And I've learned that sometimes that's the most important thing to do for a person, because it's only in that moment when they're really confronted with the reality of their life.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned we've had some interesting discussions around this recently. When you saw the trainer, everyone who's watched the show more times will know the story, but just when you saw the trainer who was behaving in ways which were creating confusion by being a little bit more sexually promiscuous with people that were in the training.
Yeah.
That if you said to him, as you did, let me call your attention to a behavior,
yeah,
then you gave him all the space in the world not to be held accountable for the implications of that behavior.
Yeah.
When you screamed at him and yelled at him, everyone would have said, oh, Bambos is the problem here. Mm. But in actuality, you were maybe the first person ever to hold him accountable for the behavior.
Yeah. It did escalate to that.
Yeah.
So in a way, yeah.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, and in our interaction, I would also say it escalated to the moment when I interacted with you last week.
Yeah.
And an individual watching would say, hey, who cares who's right? And I would agree. The right or wrong wasn't the issue on that moment at all. It was, where does the defense stop you from allowing the connection to stay in connection?
Yeah.
And that's, we can go into that a bit. Not that with you, but specifically.
It wasn't only the defense, right? Like, it wasn't only about breaking connection, but also when you or we as people defend something, what I discovered for myself, I'm not fully embracing that part of myself.
No. Oh, completely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's articulate, because you said it shorthand, is that what I've seen, and we've discussed this on several occasions, usually off air, is that I see life as a bit of an improvisation. And that's why every time I bring an improvisation show on, it never quite works, because I always have a thing in mind, but it doesn't quite go there.
It's because we need to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
the improvisation is, Bambos, you are totally irresponsible when it comes to relationships.
And my mother says the same.
That would be almost a beautiful embrace. But you would say, really, what makes you say that? Right? That would be the something that you stay in wonder.
Yeah.
And the opposite to wonder is,
so yeah. Here's where the defense mechanism came.
Yeah.
If a statement like that hit me, there was something in me that didn't want to look at that inside of me, where that might be true.
Yeah, where that might be true.
And it comes out looking like
that. Yeah, it comes out looking like that.
Like armor, sword, like.
Yeah, and the hard thing is that people watching, and this is where I see they have to also understand the context, is you have to understand that one would say that our relationship has to be trusting enough that that's always a space. And we've agreed to that space, actually. independently of the show. That's the space we've agreed to. So the fact that it comes up on air is great. It just shows what I would say we hold one another accountable towards.
Yeah.
And in our however many years we've been interacting, I think interacted like that twice in that many years. Is that right? Would there be more?
Once in the training.
Once in the training, yeah.
And once here.
And once here.
Andy hosted a 15-month training where he didn't want me to be part of because
I knew you'd be in trouble.
Hilarious that we can just say that and laugh at it.
Yeah. But and that would be, imagine if we made the same statement and we didn't celebrate the humanity, because you could say, Andy, what made it hard for you to bring me into the course? Now, if I wouldn't be able to be at peace with that, I wouldn't also be able to laugh at it, because I'd be holding tension in my body. And if I look at I think you'll notice when I'm interacting with someone, I'll often say, I'm not really listening to their words. I'm feeling what's going on. I'll hear the moment that switch happens where the defense kicks in. And once, like we had it yesterday when we met our friend on the road. We don't have to use names, but like when you pointed out that his ugly jacket was 2 sizes too big for him.
Oh.
And by the way, I agreed with you completely. Like, it was the most honest, most clear thing you could say, right?
Yeah.
It really was not flattering for him at all.
No.
And he reacted to it. He got triggered by it.
Did he?
Yeah.
I missed that part.
Yeah, he got triggered by it. And I could see his trigger in that his face changed in the relaxed comfort, and he then needed to defend that he got it from a very special source.
Yeah.
So and then it was like, oh, he just flipped. I saw the flip. And I laughed because he said to me, because I spent some time with our mutual friend today, and I asked him if we could discuss this, and he said, yes, sure. And he, funnily enough, said, oh, I'm going to make sure to share with you that he was triggered and he didn't meet you where you were, and he was going to take responsibility for that. And I thought that was really beautiful.
So he saw the trigger.
Oh, yeah, he saw the trigger. Yeah.
Wow, I missed that.
Yeah. And I mean, let's agree, that jacket was way too big for him, and it didn't flatter him at all.
So if you're watching,
we think you're much sexier than you are showing yourself to be in that jacket. But regardless, what I was pointing at was that the face,
the facial expression was the first mechanism.
And I'd almost say the face, but there's also a tightening in the body. Like, I enjoy just having fun, you know that. And there's normally not the intention to rile someone up. It's me celebrating the absurdity of life. But I also see it gets me into trouble sometimes, because reveling and having fun doesn't mean that other people aren't identified and feeling hurt by that. So there are times when I have to make apologies for creating things unintended.
Yeah, which is what I'm also going to do with our mutual friend.
Yeah, but
and I I realized I said it, but I wasn't really thinking. Oh, because I always know him, that he's wearing these amazing jackets which compliment him.
Yeah.
So when I saw, like, wow, did you go to the secondhand store? That was a surprise for me.
Yeah, I understood.
Because he's always dressed to, as far as I'm concerned, perfection.
Yeah, I always find him dressed well as well. Yeah.
And now after justify, I'm a photographer, and I notice these things.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and so, but that's what that's sort of the thing that I'm always feeling, is the moment of that shift. And it's such a nuance, but I mentioned my dad, because of him being bipolar and me being frightened as a child. I was very acutely aware of the things that would set people off.
Yeah.
and and that's just how I started to process the world, is what sets people off, and then I could see in their quick reactions the um the comfort that they had within themselves. It's like a vibration, even, that you would say that they give off. Yeah.
Yeah, I met a friend this morning for breakfast,
Okay.
and I haven't seen this individual for 8 years.
Yeah.
So she asked about my daughter, and my in the past my defense mechanism was good, and I don't have to say more than that. And today I felt I could see that where my brain would go to the defense mechanism,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and there was a part of me that felt, oh shit, I don't want to get into this right now. And I saw that I don't want to get into this right now because I can cry.
Mm. Wow.
Um, I didn't fully allow myself to go to the tears, but I did share that it was difficult for me to share, and I did share.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So it's really interesting where you can cut.
Mm. That what you said now,
Hmm.
that's the spaciousness that I feel like it's hard for people to give themselves when they're charged and reacting. The seer that sees themselves reacting and allows space, or the beer who just reacts, which is what is clearly more associated with defense behavior.
Yeah.
It's really subtle, by the way. There was many years of my life when I worked with Case, my mentor, um, and Case would say, "Andy, you're doing this or this or this." So he would start to tell me or coach me or mentor me a certain way. And what I would say to him is, "Case, the way that you're explaining this to me isn't working for me."
Hmm. How
The
did you respond?
in a way, he spent years, and then one day he said, "Andy, I don't know if you're aware of it, but the fact you're trying to coach me on how to coach you is a defense mechanism."
That's brilliant.
It was brilliant. And I wasn't aware of it, because it was often the case that there's certain people we gravitate towards that we're more comfortable with us giving feedback, because we're not charged by the way they give it. And how he would give it is, I've always said, he was very direct sometimes. And what I saw in my own is that I wasn't comfortable with that directness, which allowed me to stay hidden. Because if I didn't accept the direct feedback, then I
Mm.
could stay hidden, which meant that I could spin in circles for a lot of time. So that was something that I wasn't aware that I was putting up boundaries, and by doing that, keeping myself safe.
Safe.
Yeah. Uh,
I want to bring a comment up because this is
yeah,
something that I
please.
was going to get into.
Please.
Jessica de Vries, hello. I learned there is more than flight, fight, freeze, fawn, or pleasing behavior.
Uh-huh.
If you're safe, I am safe. If you're feeling okay, I can relax. And never realized that I, for a very long time, just lived in a defense mechanism.
I want to read that again and try to feel into it. There seems like there's so much in what you said, and I learned there is more than fight, flight, or freeze, fawn, or pleasing behavior.
Okay, stop there. So the fight was the pushing away, or I could have run away, yeah, if we talk about last week's show.
Yeah, yeah,
Or I
yeah,
could have gone paralyzed.
yeah, yeah. Or you could have gone paralyzed.
I stayed more in the fight.
Yeah,
And then the tears was actually the surrender.
yeah. That was the surrender.
What was fawn again? That's a new word.
Fawn, I think, in the context is like look in awe of another person or something, or like romanticize that they know things that you don't know.
Okay.
Or in the people pleasing, obviously just do things so that you don't get hurt, which is what I would have done with my dad. People pleasing, just trying to make sure that he didn't explode too much.
So she's saying, if you're safe, I'm safe.
Yeah, if you're safe, I'm yes. Beautiful.
And if you're feeling okay, I can relax. So that's the caretaker.
Yeah, that's the caretaker.
The manager.
The manager. I never realized that I, for a very long time, just lived in a defense mechanism. Wow. Yeah, that was half of my life.
Thanks for that, Jessica.
We can leave that up for a second, because I just feels really emotional feeling it. It's really, if you're safe, I'm safe. Like I've often stated that with my dad, but hearing those words stated that way, it really touched me. Because that was my life as a kid, was like, if he's okay, then I'm okay. I can relax if he's okay. But since you never knew what would set him off, you were never really fully relaxed. And I think what I learned until I started to, that it was like a humming noise in my head all the time, which always was a discomfortable hum. And I didn't realize that life could exist without that hum. A constant vibration of discord that I never could see was discord, because it was like white noise that you don't even know is white noise.
It was a norm.
It was the norm.
Wow.
And I think when I started to work with Case and really break down a lot of the kind of this pre-programming, I started to feel like, oh, there's something underneath that was lost, which was just this childhood joy. That's what I always associated with, childhood joy. And it's a joy that's the joy, like everything just feels perfect and there's only opportunity and everything feels rich and full. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes. The thing that I've seen with identity, or what I see with defense mechanisms, is that what I wanted to connect it back. I always see a defense mechanism connected to an identity. So there is a defense mechanism that's reacting to what it does or does not want.
It's protecting the eye.
It's protecting the eye.
If you take away someone's eye, it's like you are pretty much sending them down a dark hole.
Of course, right? Because we create an identity to survive, and yet that same identity is the one we also need to protect when it comes to dealing with other people. So one of the things that I've seen on the show is that we try to find guests that have a very low self-identity that needs to be protected. Wait.
Well, the fact that we try doesn't always work out.
No, it doesn't. But you know what we know the moment it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
There's like 3 or 4, and it happens even before the show begins.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mean when we're talking to them behind
just behind the scenes? We always like, it's almost like we don't say it, but we're like, oh, we're going to need to be guarded because the individual does have things that are so important to them that if we pointed them out and there might be any inconsistency, they wouldn't be comfortable having that discussion, that sort of feeling.
Yeah. And just to be clear, there's no judgment there. When we have guests, we really appreciate them. And we're not here to take the plaster off and
no.
Look at you.
Yeah, exactly. But there will be some, when we ask a question, we'll say, maybe we won't ask the next question because that wouldn't connect to where they are comfortable.
Yeah.
Because intention isn't to make people uncomfortable, as we've often said. I think our one of our big listeners on the last, his comment, Bolalang, was he finds that part of the joy of watching us is how we make our guests feel comfortable on the show. But my point would be, which is what I'm often feeling, is that if something stated and then the charge comes back, which is the defense, then already there's two things. I know it's useless to continue because once the amygdala is firing, there's no reason to keep in that discussion unless you have an ulterior purpose. So that's the one thing that I've learned. And the second is I can make assumptions, but I don't really know what is the thing that the person is protecting. What's the identity? The thing they don't want to be seen as, or the thing they don't feel like they are being seen for?
So last week, to be clear, I was protecting. I didn't want to be seen as a womanizer, as an asshole, and anything that might be attached to a man that potentially doesn't respect women.
Yeah, yeah.
And it felt like I was defending my livelihood in that moment. I'm not that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole, like, once we get into any form of that identity protection, then we also create a new identity. Like, that may be what I used to be, but I'm not that anymore. Or I was never that way and never in the way you're describing, or whatever the words would be. It would always have a very strong grounding in it does not reflect the person who I want to be seen as.
Let's slow down here, because I, like, as I spoke those words, I really felt an emotion there. And it's really subtle, and part of me wants to push it away. Like, I don't want to feel this discomfort. I don't want to be like, I still feel I don't want to be perceived like that.
Yeah.
I want to be perceived as a loving, caring, grounded man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, if I don't embrace the one, I cannot be the other.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, the moment I don't embrace the first, the I in me will judge other men who I perceive to be like that. So I can never fully meet someone that exhibits the behavior of a womanizer.
Yeah.
And love them as a human being, even. Because I'm better than them.
Yeah.
That would be the story, pretty much.
Yeah. I used to be like that, but I've grown out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how I translate also last week, and it was celebrate all parts of yourself.
Yeah.
You're not just this. You're the whole spectrum of whatever was in my DNA, and going downwards, I've carried all that shit in me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. We can continue.
No. I see how there is an aspect that also has to be addressed, is just because you can accept it doesn't mean there also isn't pain or challenge in allowing it. So I also don't want us to confuse that allowing. It would be like, some people are like, you can rationalize your feelings away, and that's just nonsense. So the one thing that's hardest that I found in life is, how do you feel the defense come up and then allow spaciousness to not make that in any way a reaction? And they always say they'd make the distinction of reaction of response. How do you make it so that it moves from this spaciousness? I mean, I think I've always told you, I always think my thoughts are just as crazy ass things. I don't know, like, where they came from. Like, I don't try to take them all that seriously. And so when they pop up, I'm like, I sit and wonder, like, wow, that's wondrous. Where did that one come from? Like, whoo, that's crazy, And sometimes there'll be tears behind the wonder. or sometimes there'll be anger behind the wonder, but there's almost a discovery of me which continues to expand the more I leave spaciousness there to see it. And it goes a little bit back to one of the shows we did where we said the beer or the doer. The beer would be the one basically who's feeling and allowing that experience to be experienced without judging it. The doer is the one who's reacting to it quickly because it's what feels most active and present. Right.
Yeah.
There's a Miriam. She's come on to share. It takes such a subtle, laser-focused, acute sense of self-honesty to view our own stories or perceptions from purely curious perspective. Yeah.
And there's also the part of having people in our life who are willing to be a mirror is just as important, because we don't always see ourselves. You also sometimes check in with me, like you surprise me sometimes. Put this thing hanging here. Here it is. Go away. See? The all-seer. Andy, what's here?
That's funny, isn't it? It looks like a bug. It is a bug.
It's a bug life.
Go ahead.
So having people in our lives that we trust and will be mirrors, like we have a context, for example. I know, at least in my being, that whatever you're going to put on my plate is not going to come from you needing me or trying to manipulate me into something.
Yeah.
So whatever you're going to say to me, even if it's tough,
the intention is always clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think we discussed a little bit about that, because I'm not interested in feedback from people that are judging me. Right?
Fuck you and your judgments.
I love it when people share their experiences and then reflect on what it does to them, how it impacts them, because I learn a hell of a lot from that. But when someone takes their own insecurity and their anger from pain that they haven't dealt with
and don't show it
clearly, and then react and then project and then create a story and then ask you to have to defend that I see as someone not taking responsibility.
You are inappropriate.
Yeah. That's someone not taking responsibility for their own feelings and blaming the world for the way that they make them feel. Yeah. So that's
a lot of times we'll surround ourselves with people, well, I know that in my past also, who validate who we are.
Yeah.
And anyone else is an asshole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, I had a situation last week, we'll leave nameless as well, where I'm not going to use any words.
I love these situations.
Well, it's my situation, so I can leave it nameless.
Yeah. Good.
Where, I jokingly started the conversation with the most playful, fun words I would use to start a conversation. And then the individual didn't see it as playful. And they said that was unprofessional or inappropriate or whatever the words they gave to it were. And in that...
They told you in that moment?
No, they had to sit with it a little bit. And then they called somebody else to complain, and I happened to be there. So I asked for the phone back so I could connect and take responsibility and say, totally sorry. I felt you're such a close friend. That's how I interact with close friends. And and then they lectured me on, this is not the way you interact with people, and so on and so forth. Right.
Yeah.
And I fully just said, I'm totally, because I don't want to create a problem for someone. I certainly didn't say it to provoke them. I said it because that's how close I felt to them. It was the actual opposite of what transpired. And yet it was also fine. They get to be them and I get to be me, and I can take responsibility for it. But what I could see was that they needed to reconcile the fact that the way I was interacting was inappropriate in order for them to be able to stay in their defense. And that's what I see happen a lot. Instead of one saying, wow, Isn't it fascinating that someone could think that this is a way you would interact with another person? Wow, what does that feel like? How is it when I feel that way? If I treat everyone I meet like my best friend, how is that feeling?
Mm.
Instead of inviting that view on the world, it was, no, there's a way to have a first conversation with a person you don't know that well. And that's how we as individuals get locked in an identity. And I mean, of course, we'll know that an individual has trauma because you don't have a response like that without trauma. So I can have compassion for their trauma and not get into my own defense, like, you don't see me. But I also don't have to pretend like it's not a coaching call. Because if I have a conversation with them, I have to hold space for them. And then that takes time, effort, and I'm not getting paid for that. I see that happens a lot in life, by the way.
Mm.
Jessica's written some new stuff, which I always love to see what she has to share. Addition to fawn, pleasing defense mechanism, the emotional unavailability of others led to a feeling of loneliness and isolation. Pleasing is then also, if I take emotional care of you, I hope you will really see me. Wow. Yes is really giving us some very deeply compressed stuff today. There's a resentfulness that comes in if we are taking care of a person, and by doing that, we implicitly, we don't state it outright per se, believe that they should see us in that doing.
Mm.
So when they don't see us in that doing, we then become resentful to them, and therefore the defense mechanisms come up. That's intense. I've seen myself do that as well a lot of my life. You?
I'm not really completely sure how this connects to
The defensive?
yeah.
I see it in defense mechanisms because behavior, in my mind, leads to defense reactions. So one of the defenses would be, let's say if I have a mother, and that mother will take, but not in any way acknowledge that I'm giving, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a sense of entitlement or victimization. They're a victim and they're actually. So now I fall into that pattern of saying, I'm going to take care of you. I'm taking care of you. I'm taking care of you. And I hope you see how much I love you and how much I care for you in that. So
yeah.
as soon as that is not seen, there will also be a defense
and resentment.
So she's pointing out a specific place where that defense mechanism will kick in.
Yeah, being there.
And if we go back to what we said earlier on this program, our identity is this individual wants to be seen as a good child. They want to be seen as helpful, as loving, as someone who's there for a parent. So the identity that's being attacked, as it were, is that they're not seeing who I am. And that's part of that, the thing they can't give themselves, right? And we often will say, when it comes to identity, we use the hashtag "and it's fucking great" group, because we'd invite that person to say, I'm a really shitty child and it's fucking great. Like that would be the getting over such a thing, is at least one tool that, we've been playing with a lot on the show. Did you see from Bolalong what he came in with?
There are things that I know about myself that I have accepted, but are not serving me to share with the public. What purpose does it serve me to share them? Probably none then.
I was going to say, I love...
trick question.
Is that a trick question, Bolalong? What are you trying to do? I have things in my life that aren't working for me, but I haven't got a big problem with them. So what should I do about them? There's nothing to do in that case, as far as I see. Yeah.
But we would love to know.
We would love to know. We can tell a lot of your story through our. I think I could write a little booklet about Bolalang, knowing all these little things around his life.
The 12 top things about Bulalang.
Yeah, that you probably don't know yet.
And then send it to a Christian community
Yes.
church in South Africa.
Yeah.
Around the corner from where he lives.
Yeah. But yeah, I would. The ability to navigate defense mechanisms in my coaching practices is probably the area that I feel like I've gotten attuned to best. Because I think you'll notice in our connection, you'll see a contrast or something, or you'll react to something, then you almost know the first question I'll ask you usually is, well, what just happened?
And I'll say nothing.
Yes. And then we go from there.
Yeah.
And I think that when people are within,
or what am I sensing here?
Or what am I sensing here? What is that? That's what you'll often say. I won't ask that question. What am I sensing here? There feels strangely, I feel like there's a little bit of arrogance to it, because it presumes that you're actually sensing something.
Which I am.
Yeah. When my question, it was just my assumption, right? My nuance is.
No, I'm right. I feel like a Jedi Knight in that moment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to provoke him a little bit to see if anything would happen now, but it's not really budging.
Well, you could say that, but the other person, I'm more concerned in my own life about the process.
Yeah.
So if I say, "What am I sensing here?"
As
then
opposed to what's
going on for you right now, they have nothing to defend in the what's going on right now. They could say nothing. I say, "Okay, great," and I continue. But if I say, "What was the term you used? What am I sensing here?" It holds them on the hook to describe an experience that you're having that they might not be having. Or maybe they are having it, but they feel less comfortable sharing it potentially. Yeah.
So the first statement actually creates space.
That's what I've found in my own life, right? I always talk about experience, and then I'm in general, when I see a charge has happened in a person, when the defense mechanism is kicked in, safety is required. So in any way, if I take safety away subtly or otherwise, it's less likely that the individual will be comfortable sharing what's really going on behind it. And let's be clear, they may not even know what's really going on behind it. So in a way, it's a invitation to an exploration into their subconscious, which is why you'll also know sometimes when someone says, "I don't know," the first question I'll ask right after that is, "Do you know?" I was wondering if you've heard me say it so many times you got sick of it.
If they say, "I don't know,"
I don't know. Sometimes I'll say, doesn't matter. Not an exam. What if you had to guess?
Yeah, I was feeling like I was trying to feel the context. I don't know.
Yeah. And then you'll hear that when someone says, "I don't know," there's often a defense mechanism that's kicked in, because it doesn't have a direct answer to that question. It doesn't know where to begin. And that's the first response that comes out is, "I don't know."
How does it feel to not know?
You could ask that, but I would often then ask, "What if you had to guess?" Because in the guessing, the individual doesn't have to take responsibility for what they've said. They can guess. If I say, "What is it?" then I'm forcing them to then again still defend the fact that they know what they're talking about. Where a lot of times when we play around in the junk of the subconscious, you're really just inviting people to, like, let's throw it out. Let's throw it all on the table, and we can discuss how it looks.
Nice. Yeah. Now, this makes sense to me. Like, I've seen you do that so many times.
Yeah.
Also with others, and now that you've given it words, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how that works now.
Yeah. So what if you had to guess? And then then the person will say it, and then what you'll see is in the saying of it, often either there'll be a smile that emerges, like, and then it's almost like, it's closer to truth than not truth. Or sometimes you'll see them making stuff up, and you'll know that it doesn't feel like it's connecting to anything in them, which is just they're making stuff up, right? And either way, it's fine because there's a safe space, and as long as a safe space is there, you can explore together. And what I see, and this is how I've navigated it in my own life, if I push someone, I've tended to see they'll resist it. They'll always take a step back. So if I say anything like, I see this in you, what's going on? That'll still create tension. So I'll just say, what's going on? And what's going on right now? There's nothing they need to defend. I don't know. I don't see anything. Okay, but what if you had to guess? There's nothing to defend. They can guess and they don't have to hold themselves accountable to it.
Yeah.
So there's always an invitation without a push. That's what I've seen, at least how I've felt myself navigating when the amygdala is more charged. But let's agree, you're navigating a very tense space because a lot of times it's almost like I've often said the most intelligent people are hardest to coach.
Oh, yeah.
Because they figured out logically how to defend any question by going to a special corner where they don't have to answer it.
And they'll give very elaborate answers without answering.
Yeah. Yeah. And that'll also happen, of course, as well. Let's see. Have we already had this question? Yeah. No, we haven't. No. This is a new one from Jessica. Fawn and pleasing is a real defense reaction for children and adults, as in Stockholm syndrome. It means that the isolation is life-threatening. Children's life depends on connection. Nice. I think she's continually written this in because we haven't addressed it in the way she intended it. I don't know if this is correct or not, because she said in the earlier message, fight, flight, or freeze. And she says those are the three mechanisms that people tend to identify, defense mechanisms. But she's saying, Andy, and I'm wording this without being for sure, fawning and pleasing is also a defense mechanism, and that's what she's been stating over and over again, which I think is really quite beautiful because I haven't noted them as distinct, and as I read it, it becomes clear to me. My defense mechanism as a child was pleasing my dad so that I wouldn't get yelled at. So there wasn't fight, flight, and I see from Jessica's continually saying, she says it's correct. So thank you, Jessica, for continuing it. Sometimes it takes 3 knocks at the door for us to understand what you were trying to communicate.
With me, I would have needed one more.
I think we have another one coming in from Mariam. I'm curious, what does your name mean, Bolalang? That's a random question, which is very welcomed. Bolalang, you're being asked for what your name means. Yes, thank you.
And we'll wait.
Yes, we will wait on that one. I had an interesting situation with our discussion with Ronnie yesterday.
With our discussion?
No, with talking about car insurance, because we're going to be driving more often. I love how when I speak, I just see that little smart smirk on your face, like, where is this one going to go? Like, I love that. So
if you haven't seen the show, Ronnie and Andy's relationship, watch it.
Yeah, that one has gotten a lot of views, actually. It's been really sweet.
I think it saved a lot of relationships.
Really? That's really sweet.
Continue.
We were talking about car insurance, and it was funny because Ronnie has, because I've been driving for the last 15 years or however long we've been together now. I have, those who don't know, I've been having sort of dizzy spells when I'm driving. There's sort of like a vertigo-like feeling. So she has to drive now. So because she hasn't really been driving, it's a bit like getting up to speed and, driving again. You need to get used to it. So I think we need to at least think about the insurance we get now, just because there's a bit more liability if you haven't driven. I would want to do the same for myself.
I think this show needs to be deleted from this point on because Andy has just burned himself.
Well, she's in agreement. There's no, we don't have any challenge. But I asked her a really simple question which was, what was the insurance policy, because I thought one was better with another rental company. And the interesting thing was, the only answer that would have needed to come is, um, basically, I don't know and I don't care, and if you want it, then go and look into it yourself. But she took the idea that she had to be responsible to the answer. So there was a defensiveness that came up in her response, which for me was disconnected with the question that I was asking. It had nothing for her to be accountable to. It was more, basically, I was just wondering because I thought, oh, I'd love to look into it. And I would have looked into it myself. So we had a short exchange. So often we'll have an exchange and then we'll go meta and say, okay, so just to discuss the dynamic that just occurred, babe, interestingly, when I asked you that question, you weren't accountable to the answer. I just was asking because I was curious, and then we had a laugh because it was funny, because in a way there was a degree to which I saw, and she acknowledged she was taking responsibility for the thing, and she wasn't necessarily interested in anything else I might come up with. And I said, that would have been fantastic, of course, because, just because I'm interested doesn't mean that you need to be interested. And even went to the point, I said, the freedom comes if I ask the question, you say, just do me a favor, whatever happens, I'm okay with the consequences. Like, that's also a fair answer, because then you're just fully not needing to defend. But what I laughed at was showing how the simple nuance of reacting defensively immediately constricts you. And in this case, her vibration, her energy, in just feeling free. And so we had that talk. It never escalates because we talk about stuff and learn from it. Yeah. But I guess the reason why would be, she implicitly would think that I would be judging that she didn't do it well, or that she didn't plan well, or whatever it was, where in actuality, I had none of that thought. I just was thinking, what's the deductible? What is our real liability? It was a simpler question than that. Yeah. So she forwarded me the email and said, great, if you want to deal with it, then you can.
Here you go.
Here you go.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to also, we've got, 8 minutes, and I think it's
7.5.
7 3/4.
6 1/4.
We just name it down. We got 5 minutes left. I would love to go through. I'd love to go through the last 5 minutes. That would be the funniest. Oh, Jesus. I don't even know what I was going to say anymore. I just lived that whole experience in my head.
Triggers.
Yeah, I think,
like, when I think about defense mechanisms, when I've seen them clearly in others, I always see a child.
Oh, yeah. A regressive moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the part of me that sees something, wants to be right, drops it, because in a way I see that in that moment I'm going to have a discussion with the 5-year-old version of them.
Yeah.
And there is no discussion. There's I'm right and I need to be right now.
Yeah.
So to what degree do you poke the bear?
Yeah.
And create open an old wound where maybe they're not ready. And that's what we also said. Sometimes people might not be ready.
Well, I would say, I don't know if they're ready or not ready. I would say once they're triggered, then the question you have to ask yourself, or I would always ask myself, is what use is it engaging at that moment?
Yeah.
And then either withdraw or give love, or,
give
or,
love.
or whatever helps the moment. And that's often what I've seen. What I was finding interesting was, I see that, I'm getting triggered all the time in my own brain. Like, things happen and I'm getting triggered all the time.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah. and it's interesting because I always see the triggers as the educators. The triggers are those things that are like like pointing to points where, wow, that's interesting, that's going on. Wow, that's interesting, that's going on. So
they're serving you.
They're serving me. Yeah, I really, if I'm in my coaching practice, like I use the triggers nowadays to actually offer value. Because if there's no triggers in me, there's no value I'm delivering. It's actually feeling the triggers and then giving them words in a loving, spacious way, which allows other people to connect who are having the same triggers.
Example.
Today, I can't go into clients, of course, because I see that there's a disconnect between, I'm just going to be as generic as possible because I can't be more specific. Two clients that aren't necessarily they're not embodying a vision in the same way. So there's not really alignment. And I've lived
they're in the same company.
In the same company, yeah. And I've lived enough times in my life to know where that story leads.
Divorce?
It's divorce, but it's a company, so they're not divorcing. But one of them separates. There's resentment. There's anger. So people don't share a vision together, but they're trying to build something. It gets tense. So I now am interacting with each one of these individuals independently. I'm getting tense because now I'm like, okay, so now you want me to implement something, but if I implement it as he wants it, he's going to get frustrated. And if I implement it as he wants it, the other one's going to get frustrated.
I love how your he gets high pitched.
Yeah, just trying to play the character in my head.
How did you navigate that?
Well, I let the tension come up, and then I like sit with it. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling tense. Like I can feel a bit like even knowing that anything I do, which doesn't resolve this first, is just going to be everyone I'm going to interact with is going to get defense because they're going to say, yeah, but it's going to be a mommy, daddy. Daddy doesn't give it to me, so I'm going to ask mommy. Mommy doesn't ask me, so even that's going to create chaos. So I interacted and said very clearly, this is going to be bad if we don't address it right now in a way where you align with how you're going to do this and how you want it to be delivered and on and on. So I let my defense come up because I don't want to go into a situation I'm going to fail in, then to say, ask for a meeting and then create the spaciousness where it's addressed before I spend 3 to 6 months on a project where it then becomes obvious that this was going to, I'm sugarcoating a problem when I could have dealt with it, before it even became as big a problem as I see it becoming.
Are you facilitating this now?
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
And so that's where I'll let my triggers sort of become outspoken and create facilitating environments where I'll be more open about it and not say, I'll be strong about it. Like in the past I would have said it could go wrong and I would have left space for it not to be dealt with, and now I'll say it's going to go wrong. Like that's the difference between me 6 or 7 years ago and me now. Like I don't leave space for maybe one time out of 100 it might work.
Take it seriously.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you avoid it and then act like it wasn't going to be a problem. Sometimes I'll even write the document of what's going to happen, and then they'll be freaked out. Bolalong does answer the question what his name is.
Declare.
My name is Declare or have a conversation depending on the context. What does your name mean, Miriam? You two, you go get a bedroom, you two. Our show is not a platform for the two of you to sort of...
Andy, that's inappropriate.
I love that Bolalong's name is Declare or Have a Conversation because that is what he's all about. That's beautiful, Bolalong.
So to what degree is he identifying with his name?
Yeah, that's a question we'd have for you, Bolalong. Where do you get defensive if someone says something to you like you're closed-minded and you are not open to seeing different points of view?
Especially when you're being photographed like
with
this.
Your arms crossed. I love that image. And we have Miriam today. I love you guys. It's been a chaotically wonderful hour. I don't know what GTG means. Do you know that?
I'm not good with that kind. Like I had to look at what LOL means.
A lot of laughter, a lot of laughs. I think I don't even know that.
Laugh out
By
loud.
the way,
I hope
it is laugh out loud. Oh, by the way, I'll tell you later what my name means, Bolalong. Oh, nice, sweet. Wow.
No, I'm in suspense, Mariam.
Yeah, I am in suspense. I'm wondering, was this Mariam mentioned that this was a chaotic hour. I wonder if it was chaotic because we were all over the place on this topic, or if it was chaotic because emotions came up, or what?
Sorry. Got to go.
Oh, Jessica, thank you. GTG for those listeners means got to go. Uh,
uh,
oh, look at and Bolalong is giving us. He clearly didn't react anxious to that. He says an African with crossed arms is not closed but respectful.
I am going to do this like this now.
I love it. We love you, Bolalong.
We for sure love you, Bolalong.
So that's it for this show. That was really sweet. Yeah. We've got only 2 more shows this week.
Only 2 more, guys.
Because Thursday and Friday are holidays in this beautiful country we call the Netherlands.
Actually, it's only on
It's Thursday. Only Thursday, but I'm taking Friday off so I can spend some extra love time with my wife, Ronnie Paputri. We love you. We thank you.
I'm going to let
We're
you guys...
grateful. Please share us. Please send us, because it would always be nice to have more people around every so often.
Tomorrow, we have our dear friend Natalie Galfrascoli.
Oh, Garfra.
She's the one that gave our show the name that we have today, Wonderful Chaos.
Wonderful Chaos.
And she's coming on for the second time, and I Cannot Trust Men. I love it.
That's her show, yeah.
And on Wednesday, the 12th of May, which is the last show for this week, Walter Cooper leading the way.
Oh, my. Walter Cooper, this is the coolest. Walter's in his 90s. He lived through so much history. He is a Black man in America at a time when it wasn't easy to be Black. He was in the civil rights movement. He knew Martin Luther King. And he spent time with Malcolm X. He spent time with Robert F. Kennedy before he was also assassinated in his 90s.
We better get him on the show.
And he's got some incredible history. And I just wanted to just be with him and just celebrate this wonderful life. So that's the show Wednesday. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you then.
On
a wonderful chaos. Till next time. Bye.